I don't know yet enough. So it means you have time to put your deposit together, to go to NHT tomorrow morning, get your pre-qualification, so when the people them come set up officers and so them starting to sell, the Roselle line supposed to wrap around the block. Because
this design is showing what the proposal is to maintain Rozelle Falls. So there will be this vegetative buffer, and it's 11 meters on either side.
Roselle, white horses, surrounding communities. How are these people going to benefit from that particular development in terms of housing?
And we clipped it out. We have read it 2-3 times. I'm going to ask you to read it and make comments on what is in that article. That's very important because...
Welcome back everybody to another video. So in today's video, we'll be learning about the Rozelle Estate Housing Development that is stated to be built in St. Thomas.
ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant evening to you. This evening, I will be your moderator for the evening. My name is Noel Phillips, and I would like to welcome you to this special community consultation meeting for the proposed Rozelle development. Before we go any further, I want to ask Mr. George Patrick from the Mount Carmel Spiritual House of God, who will be coming to open for us in prayer. Mr. Patrick is here, or he's coming?
Okay, attitude of prayer. Righteous God and our Heavenly Father, we thank you for all the people that have gathered here today. We pray that you bless our heart as we come, and I pray that all things will be done in the honor and the glory of your name. We'll send up the praises to you, and you pour down the blessing on our soul. Let everything be done, Lord, in decency and order. That the praises is yours, and the blessing will be yours. And I pray that the word of our mouth and the meditation of our heart will be acceptable in your sight, knowing that you are our strength and you are our Redeemer. Have your own sweet divine way. The rest of the day proceeding is in your hands. We tell you thanks. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Patrick. We wouldn't want to proceed without having the Master's blessing on our proceeding this evening. Now, this consultation is really about a development that is proposed to be done. And the consultation is a part of the approval process. Now, every person here in some way will be affected by it. And it's important that consultations like this are done to make sure that any development that is done in a way that it best suits everybody that is involved. Personally, I must state my hand in that I have a bias towards the development of St. Thomas. And I tell you why. St. Thomas has been one of the most important parishes in this country. You agree? When it comes to emancipation, when it comes to our independence, St. Thomas played a very, very important role. You agree? Put your hands together if you agree, man. It's all right to clap. But somehow, sometimes it feels like the last 60 years, St. Thomas has been the forgotten parish. Not true? When it comes on to infrastructural development, when it comes to local economic development, St. Thomas seems to have been left behind. And so because of that, I have a personal bias towards developments like these, because I think the people of St. Thomas deserves more. I think for a lot of persons who want to stay close to their family home and where they were born, feel like they always have to leave St. Thomas to be able to find gainful employment and to develop themselves. Now, this is a part of bringing the gainful employment to St. Thomas. This is a part of bringing wealth to St. Thomas and allowing for the persons who want to stay home but want to develop themselves and develop their lives to have opportunity. Not true? So the proceedings this afternoon will take the following outlay. We're going to ask Mr. Randolph Watson from NEPA, who is coming to do the opening remarks, after which Miss Alison Pierce will be doing the first presentation, and Miss Natalie Johnson will be doing the second presentation, and then we'll have the open discussion. Now that is where everybody gets to ask the questions and the things that are burning and the concerns that you have. You're then able to hear all those concerns. So I'm going to ask Mr. Watson to come now. Mr. Watson from NEPA is coming. Put your hands together for him. And
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Wonderful. All right. I'll be reading a statement from the National Environmental and Planning Agency for the proposed subdivision and housing development at Roselle, White Horses, St. Thomas. In August 2023, New Rozelle Property Limited applied for an environmental permit for a proposed subdivision and housing development at Roselle, White Horses, St. Thomas. Application number 2023-03017 EP 00277. The information submitted in support of the application was reviewed and a decision arrived at that an environmental impact assessment, that's an EIA, would be required for the project. This public meeting is a preliminary action as required by the EIA process, and thus no final decision has yet been made on the application. Let me repeat that. This public meeting is a preliminary action as required by the EIA process, and thus no final decision has yet been made on the application. Participants should note that this public meeting is deemed very important, and the outcome from the meeting will be submitted to the Natural Resource Conservation Authority, that's the NRCA, to guide the decision-making process. The agency's representatives are present to support the process and to ensure that the public meeting is undertaken in accordance with the terms outlined in the document entitled General Guidelines for Public Consultation, EIA Applications. As a regulator, the agency must remain objective, and as such, the team will not participate in making comments or answering questions in relation to the development. Again, as a regulator, NEPA, the agency must remain very objective, and as such, the team will not participate in making comments or answering questions in relation to this development. Of note too is a process which, with respect to the public presentation, and the agency wishes to highlight the following with respect to this meeting. A copy of the verbatim minutes of the public consultation is to be submitted to the agency by the applicant within 7 days of the date of this public presentation. The public is allowed up to 21 days after the public presentation, which is today, to provide written comments to the agency. All comments received by the agency will be collated and sent to the applicant for response to be provided. The issues raised along with the responses provided by the applicant are incorporated in the respective submissions to the various committees and authority, and will facilitate deliberations on the technical merits of the project. A recommendation will be made to the Natural Resource Conservation Authority, the NRCA, which is the body responsible for making the final decision. Please note carefully that the final decision on the application is the sole responsibility of the NRCA.
Written comments may be submitted to the application secretariat branch of the agency at 10 Caledonia Avenue, Kingston 5, or via electronic mail to applications@nepa.gov.jm. Let me repeat that. For the comments after the meeting here, within 7 days, the applicant will submit the comments, the verbatim minutes to us at NEPA. Then the community has 21 days in which to submit their comments to the agency. The agency will then collate all these comments and questions that are raised, and we will present them to the applicant for them to give the necessary answers. All right. After we get these answers, we then take it to the NRCA, which is the board, which deal with the approval of the application. And after that, then a decision will be made. Comments should be submitted to NEPA through the application secretariat branch at 10 Caledonia Avenue, Kingston 5, or via electronic mail to applications@nepa.gov.jm. The agency views the public presentation and public consultation process as extremely important in the process and decision-making process. Public presentation provide an additional opportunity for stakeholders to air concerns, comments, opinions, views on development projects, and afford the applicant the opportunity to address these concerns, comments, opinions, and views. Finally, please be reminded that the Environmental Impact Assessment Report and associated documents for the proposed projects are available for access by the public at the following locations: the St. Thomas Municipal Corporation at 11 Church Street, Morant Bay, St. Thomas; the St. Thomas Parish Library at Morant Bay, St. Thomas; the White Horses Post Office at White Horses; the Social Development Commission, Springfield Road, Morant Bay; National Environmental Planning Agency Documentation Center at 11 Caledonia Avenue, Kingston 5, and also on the NEPA website, and that is http://www.nepa.gov.jm. Comments can be sent again to the application secretariat branch of the agency at 10 Caledonia Avenue, Kingston 5, and by email at applications@nepa.gov.jm. Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Watson. Put your hands together for Mr. Watson. Thank you so much for that presentation. Now, our first presenter will be coming, which is Miss Alison Peart from Ecosystem Quality Management Limited. But before Miss Pierce comes to the mic, I just want to take this opportunity to especially recognize and welcome the Member of Parliament, Mr. James Roberts, who took time out of his busy schedule to be here. Mr. Roberts, welcome to you. A development like this means an expansion of the voting bloc, so it's important that you are here. So at this time, welcome Ms. Alison Pierce, who will be followed by Natalie Johnson, and then Mr. Roland Swaby. Put your hands together for Ms. Pierce as she comes.
Testing. Good afternoon, everyone. As just said, I am Alison Pierce. I am the head of Ecosystems Quality Management Limited, and the EIA process, the study was done by me and my colleagues here, Civex, Marisol Research Limited, and Dr. Garway and his team. Unfortunately, Dr. Garway and his team won't be here today as he has some personal matters. So I will complete the presentation, after which we'll have the question and answer session. So please note your questions for that time. I want to sort of put the the flavor going on in the pot here by asking the first question. And the question is it Roselle or is it Roselle? Wait for that session. Okay, so the agenda for the presentation, I'll do an introduction to tell you about the project itself, how the project description came about, the design came about, and the EIA approach. Then I will look at the findings, and then the conclusion, after which we'll have the question and answer session. So in terms of context, where we are, for those who are not really familiar with Roselle, or for St. Thomas, Roselle community, in which we are currently situated, is located between White Horses to the west and Duhaney Park to the east, and the major town Duhaney Pen. I'm so sorry, thank you for that. Yes, and the nearest town is Morant Bay, which is to the east. Yes. So the star is showing us where we are in relation to the project site. And the project site is outlined by the yellow marking that you're seeing. So before the EIA process commenced, there was a baseline study that we had to do. We looked at the overall property, which is the leftmost figure that you're seeing, and we considered some factors, including a topographical survey that was done to give us an idea of elevation over the landscape. We did some data search and literature review to find out the history about Roselle, what has been the community practices and activities, and then we did several days of walkthrough inspections to get ourselves acquainted with the site and what sort of nuisances exist, whether there's burning in close proximity, or we have sites where we have loud music all the time, or do we have special species of flora and fauna, meaning trees, or plants and animals. We did our initial inspections to find out this. And from that assessment, we did what is called a site analysis. So from the site analysis, we were able to do a design. And this is the design. So Rozelle Estates is what the community is to be called, and it's divided into 7 blocks, and each block will represent a phase of construction. And so phase 1 will begin with block B. So the details of the proposed development is on your right on the table. So we have not just the houses, but we have some complementary provisions, such as social services, utilities, roads, commercial and institutional provisions. And noteworthy is that given the landscape that we're dealing with, 57% of the proposal, the site represents, the residential allotment represents only 57% of the total area to be developed. The rest of it is divided into the other provisions, and noteworthy is that open space provision, that is to retain some of the landscape features, some of the vegetation, is 21% of the total area. So some contextual design features. Some of the considerations that went into the design for the development is that we wanted to provide housing for low-income persons, and a feature of the design was that nature-based solutions must be included to protect soil, water quality, and the ecosystems that exist on the property. So we're looking at a holistic design, not just providing homes, but the proper amenities associated with it for people to enjoy life at Rozelle Estates when it becomes a reality. So let's look at the approach that the EIA involved. First, we look at a description of the environment, and to do this, we had to do some detailed studies. Then we look at the analysis of the potential environmental impacts. Then we identified mitigation measures for these impacts that were identified. And then we looked at weighing different alternatives to the project. If it's not going to be a low-income housing development, what is the alternative? And we'll get to that. So some of the components that we look at is the physical environment. And here we're talking about land use, topography. So how high are certain areas? What are the slopes like? When machinery is to maneuver on the property, what will that be like? What is the climate like out here? What is the weather like, I should say? What are the soil types and hydrology? What is the drainage system like? And water quality, are there water features here? And what is the flow? What is the water quality like for those features? Then we looked at the human environment, and this is divided into two subcomponents. We had the socioeconomic aspect, so we're looking at people and their livelihood, and then we had culture. We're looking at what are the sentiments that Roselle and White Horses have. Sorry. Then there is the biological, which a lot of people here will be interested in. So we looked at the flora, or the vegetation. We looked at the fauna, or the animals. And there were specific studies that were done on endemic species. And one of the surveys that were done also included a large tree survey. So let's look at land use over Roselle. Now historically, Roselle has been a sugar estate property from the 18th to the 19th century. The site has therefore been impacted by decades of sugar cultivation. And we see that subsequent to that, we had citrus being introduced. So for a long period, the general Roselle White Horses area was under sugarcane and citrus production. Now the land use that predominates now is agriculture still, but in the form of orchards and at a lesser scale. So here on the left image, I'm highlighting that in 2015, from aerial photographs, we can see that agriculture was taking place. And we see that there are some roadways that was cut on sections of the property. Other sections have been cleared for different activities. So we see that the landscape was impacted somewhat over the years. And closer to earlier times, in 2025, we see that the orchards are maintained, but there's some vegetation regrowth in some areas that were previously cleared. Now, some activities that will not be obvious from aerial images are charcoal burning and fires. So during the large tree survey, we were able to uncover these activities, and these types of activities degrade the land. So you'll find that certain species are in detriment, and I'll get to what species we're talking about. In terms of the zoned land use, for the general area, the town and country planning provisional development order for the parish of St.Thomas prescribes agricultural use in the lower areas, and in the upper regions we have forest reserves as the zoned use to come. Currently, as I mentioned, the orchard farming is the main land use taking place, but there are also some other activities like beekeeping and animal grazing, which happens to a lesser extent. So let's look at some of the findings pertaining to the hydrological aspects. So going in a clockwise direction, we can see at the bottom left the Roselle Falls, and above that is the stream that sources the falls. At the top center is a shady spring, which is not on the property but occurs in proximity to it, and has confluence or is linked with a channel that feeds into the shady spring. Hence we considered it one of the hydrological features. And You all are aware of Damhead Spring, which the community uses for various purposes, for domestic and otherwise. So those are some of the features that we studied during the assessment period. So one of the things that we looked at was water quality. And we assessed the features that I just mentioned. And I know a lot of people will be startled to know that fecal coliform or waste matter from humans or animals is evidently present in sources such as Damhead and Rozelle Spring. So we suspect that this is coming from animals that are grazing on the property. So be careful not to get a bottle and fill it up and drink right away. You need to boil the water if you're going to be consuming it. So we also looked at air quality and noise within the area. And the findings of the assessment indicate that particulate matter, that's PM10 and PM2.5 levels, remain well within the US and the NEPA's regulatory limits throughout the period with no significant exceedance. So air quality is very good here. On the contrast though, is that ambient levels demonstrated exceedance, especially during the daytime, which we did not find as a surprise because people are carrying out their daily activities during that time of the day. So I'm gonna take a break here and my fellow colleague will present on the human environment.
Coming now, but I had to take the mic to say that Miss Pierce made my belly rumble like a while because almost every time I drive in past Rozelle Spring, I stop and drink some water. So now you're making me worry. But put your hands together for Miss Pierce and then welcome Miss Johnson as she comes.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm here to talk about the human environment and to tell you about the study that Marisol and Solutions conducted. So we conducted a business survey that talked to 35 different local businesses, and we did a socioeconomic survey where we surveyed 376 households between the communities of Roselle, White Horses, or Botany Bay. And these studies took place between December 8th, 2024 and January 13th, 2025. So some of our key findings in the community profile and demographics. The community is aging. We compared the numbers from 2009 to 2025. And in 2009, over 51% of the population was under 24. Now the average age is 50 and a half years old. So we're thinking that a lot of the youth are migrating out of the community, looking for better opportunities. So this is possibly the cause of the aging trend. We also found that there was a stable gender ratio, 54% male, 46% female, very little change since 2009. We did note that there was a marked improvement in education. Secondary school attainment went from 35% in 2009 to 54% in 2025. In 2009, nearly half of the population surveyed didn't have any education. Now 18% have vocational training, 16% have tertiary training, and 10% have primary training. And here's just a graph that shows the change in 2025. So you're right to clap, it's a big difference. We looked also at employment, income, and infrastructure. So we looked at the kind of structures, the kind of what the materials the homes are made out of in terms of infrastructure. We looked at schools in the community. We looked at churches to see, do you have any services, fire, schools, fire, hospitals, clinics, all of those different things that make up the infrastructure of the community. We looked at employment growth, and we also saw positive improvements there since 2009. Now, from 60% to 69% of the head of households were employed. We found, however, there's still an average of very low income in the community, with 55% of the earners earning less than $100,000 a year, which would equate to about $8,300 a month. Where we did see a massive change was the internet access. Internet access in 2009 was only 4%. By 2025, it was 81%. However, there are still some issues with water security, with 39% of the respondents saying they have weekly lock-offs, and 6% of the community relies on springs, especially Rozelle Spring, for their domestic use. We also found, although there is improvement, there is still a continued use of pit latrines. Use went from 85% in 2009 to 16% in 2025. So I'm now going to hand over the mic to my colleague, Ronaldo Swaby, who was also here and present for all of these surveys.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I will be presenting on the human environment and key findings of the community. So I will be presenting on the human environment and key findings of the community. So the community support 93% of resident and 85.77% businesses supporting the project. Motivations. Community development is 35.6%. Access to housing is 15.9%. And economic activity was 16.5%.
Alright, so recall that I was saying that I will return to discuss the details of the habitats that we studied. And outlined on the bottom right is the riparian area along the Roselle Spring. And the reason why this is highlighted is because for the development design, this area will not be touched. We have designed the area so that there is a 11-meter buffer, vegetative buffer that is, to protect the stream. I know from the community survey that was done that the sustainability of the stream was an issue, and when we did our baseline assessment, we came up with strategies to protect these sources. So for the details of the flora and fauna assessment, I am producing some highlights here. For the flora components, that is the plants, we identified 154 species, and 2 are the endemics. We have the godbush and the broadleaf. Now the broadleaf is special in that it is listed as threatened by the International Union for Conservation of Nature, that is the IUCN. So I know agencies like the NEPA are focused on preserving such a species. Below, the black lancehood, whilst not an endemic species, is critical to be maintained in the area. And the reason being is for this lovely butterfly to the right. The black lancehood happens to be the only plant that the butterfly feeds on. And so it is very important to preserve the plants that the butterfly need to survive. So on the fauna aspect, that is the organisms or animals, we identified 62 species, and from the 62, 8 were endemic birds and 6 endemic reptilian species. Now the Jamaican boar was not identified during the survey, but we spoke to the community and asked if they've historically known of the boar in the community, and the answer was yes. So we have the boar as one of the species to be protected in the area. Now the blue kite, or the Jamaican blue swallowtail butterfly, is of grave significance. It's an IUCN listed species as well, listed as a vulnerable species. And so for that reason, a part of the mitigation strategies, which I will discuss soon, is to protect this species. Now, as I had mentioned, we had done a large tree survey to look at what proportion of the vegetation represents species of trees that are 25 centimeters and above in diameter. So we identified 173 such species, and within this 173 were 14 species of trees. And the West Indian almond came up quite a lot of times. Now, when we compare the large tree survey with the general flora assessment that was done, we realized that the species variety was significantly lower. So most of the vegetation on the site is shrubs and ornaments. So let's look at the environmental impacts that we identified and the recommended mitigation strategies. And here I will only be highlighting the ones I consider, or the team considered, very critical, as we will be here until maybe 7 or 8 if I'm supposed to discuss all of them. So I'm going to start with the physical environment, discussing the drainage, hydrology, and soil aspects. And the concern that came out was increased runoff causing flooding in the lower regions of the property, such as the roadway, and destabilized slopes resulting in soil erosion and reduced soil fertility. Some of the recommended strategies include developing temporary stormwater management systems for runoff mitigation, such as regrading sections of the development site and designing stormwater systems to the NAA standard, to phase construction to manage stormwater flows, to also phase removal of vegetation during each phase of the development. So we're not going to be cut clearing the land. We'll only remove the vegetation from the sections of the property where the construction is going to be immediate. And a highlight of the development that we keep talking about is that Roselle represents an opportunity for sustainable design. And so nature-based solutions are being promoted. So the selection of drainage systems that use the natural environment, so more vegetation than concrete, is one of the recommendations that we have. For individual lots, grasscrete or grass block is recommended, where you have interlocking blocks between permeable paving so that runoff is reduced, and the installation of temporary sedimentation forebays. In terms of freshwater quality and the marine environment, we recognize those areas to be factors that is critical as well. So where freshwater is concerned, there will be an environmental management and monitoring plan developed for the construction of the housing scheme, and it will look closely at management of solid waste and adherence to the different mechanisms that are proposed to control soil erosion, use of chemicals, and how solid waste is treated. One of the recommendations is to install sedimentation forebays. That's for protection of the waterways, such as the streams supporting the falls, and use of traps and turbidity barriers where necessary to avoid sedimentation to the nearby marine environment. So other steps that can be taken include hoarding of the site with appropriate materials and establishing and maintaining vegetative cover where bare soils and steep erodible slopes exist. The use of detention ponds to capture the bulk of runoff loads not previously intercepted upgradient of the area is also a recommendation. So these detention ponds will be vegetated ponds. Again, this helps with infiltration of the overflow coming down and preserves water quality. In terms of ecosystems, there is a concern about edge effects. So edge effects come about when there's a sudden change to the natural environment that the plants and animals depend on. And so with edge effect you have fragmented ecosystems, and we're recommending that buffer zones be established where you have streams and gullies, and that no development is done within these buffer zones. And where possible, some larger trees within the property should be retained, especially, as I mentioned, along the riparian area, that's the areas along the streams. With regard to the butterfly and the black lancewood tree, there is to be a conservation plan developed which will establish a butterfly sanctuary to the north of the property, and this is north of the proposed development area. An establishment of a nursery for the black lancewood plant, because as I mentioned earlier, due to the fire burning, the charcoal burning, and other activities, the lancewood plant is at risk. So there has to be deliberate efforts to increase the population and to protect it. So prior to commencement of work, remove all individuals where feasible to relocate to this conservation zone. And other species will be protected, especially endemic species will be removed prior to site clearance and kept in the nursery for later relocation at desired areas. And I know Roselle Falls has to be a big topic when it comes to mitigation and sustaining the ecosystem. So this design is showing what the proposal is to maintain Rozelle Falls. So there will be this vegetative buffer, and it's 11 meters on either sides. And below this area, south of it, extending to the right, is the Roselle Nature Park, which serves as an additional buffer and a location to deliberately plant some of the endemic species that we want to protect and conserve. And it will also be something for the community to take a walk, do bird watching, some spiritual upliftment in the community. So this area, being declared as a nature park area, will be reserved. So for the environmental impact assessment, some alternatives had to be considered as opposed to the project. The first alternative would be no action. That is, you don't do anything, the land remains as it is, and there's no increase in low income housing for Roselle, and the site stays as is. But some of the negatives that were identified with that alternative is that the housing numbers would stay as they are, and there's no protection of the species, not the lancewood, not the blue kite butterfly. As proposed, we have low income housing, we have the sustainability of the endemic species. As myself was not aware of the butterfly breeding in Roselle, and was not aware that the black lancewood was the only plant that the butterfly feeds on. So it also lends to capacity building in terms of knowledge, and it offers support where the community can be involved in maintaining its resources. The third alternative was considered for apartments, and What was associated with this is a low income opportunity would be lost, and the high density type development is not a good fit for Roselle, as it's not in character with the general area here. We don't have high rises, we don't have blocks of apartments here, and so we thought it would be inappropriate to have such a design here. A fourth alternative was considered to be a tourism-focused development, which would be cottages, and using the entire property. That's the entire 417 acres. But a negative that was identified with that is from out of the community survey, a lot of folks had said that they would love to see a technical vocational center for Roselle, and that would not happen with such a development. As such, the alternative of the housing development of 895 housing solutions was chosen as the preferred development. So in conclusion, development will contribute to the national goal of providing affordable housing solutions, and the design incorporates nature-based solutions for protection of soil, water, and the ecosystems that exist on the site. We know that the community is optimistic but cautious, as there's a lot of resources to be protected, and some of these include the Roselle Falls, where there's a concern that there may be a lack of access for the community of wild horses, and Roselle in particular, to the site after the development happens, and the development will destroy the falls. But as you see, there are some mitigation measures that have been prescribed to ensure that this is not the case. For the blue swallowtail butterfly, the long-term sustainability of its food source for the larval stage, the black lancewood plant, is a concern, and a conservation zone on a section of the upper half of the property is being allocated to protect it. Other concerns include increased runoff and flooding, and nature-based designs have been recommended for grey water and drainage management, including detention ponds and vegetated swales. So I want you to understand we're talking vegetation, vegetation, vegetation. Even when we're designing, we're going to be using the natural, nature-based alternatives and not the concrete, the hard engineering solutions. So there are some opportunities associated with the development. As I said before, someone like me, and I know much of you as well, did not know about the significance of the butterfly and the lancewood plant. And we see an opportunity where we can have transformative development, where we have community participation in terms of management of the conservation area. And we see capacity building, we see people being hired to manage, people being hired to work on the housing development. We see skills development as an institution will be provided with the development, and we see resource preservation. Now, in terms of the blue swallowtail butterfly, the opportunity exists to protect a national endangered and IUCN listed vulnerable species. And so with the development, there are safeguards to ensure that the butterfly's sustainability is realized by developing the conservation plan and having the community involved so that the sustainability of that plan will be realized. And that ends my presentation, and I want to say thanks to my colleagues who contributed significantly to the EIA report, including Marcel's Research Limited, Civex Consulting, and Dr. Garway and his team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pierce. And so we move on to a very interesting segment in our program this evening, when we get to hear your voices and persons get to hear their concerns. Do we have a roving mic? Do we have a microphone that I think it will be brought to center? State your name.
Yes, my name is White Foster. I live in White Horses, in Shade Spring area, White Horses. I've been paying for a piece of land now for the longest time. Yes, okay. Yeah, man, all right. Yes, I've been paying for a piece of land for the longest time now in White Horses, and I have no access to the land. Every year I pay my taxes, and I have no access to the land. So I'm coming here to find out exactly what can I do to have access to the land, because I can pay taxes for all these years and no way to get to the land. I was blocked out by different neighbors in the area. So I'm coming out here this evening to find out exactly what can I do to solve this problem. So,
thank you so much for coming, but be reminded that the questions are intended to be directed in regards to the development specifically. What concerns do you have, and what your opinion is on the development that is proposed for? Because obviously this will be a development that will be affecting the members of the community, the stakeholders, local business persons. So we're asking that the questions be tailored to what your concerns are as regards the Roselle development.
Good evening, colleagues and community members. Aston Smith is the name, resident of Roselle community. Firstly, there are so many things that poses a concern to me. I don't know how much it does for others, because nobody seems to raise their hand, and we know that it is a norm that people always talk after the meeting is over, and we wouldn't want that. We want people to speak up now so that your voices can be heard and your issues can be addressed. Now, firstly, I'm not sure, well, I think Mr. Chris Jones is somewhere on the ground, and I would like him to tell me or us how much will the development impact the extended part of the community which we are, as it relates to water. We spoke at one point in time, and he assured me that something can be done where we could be benefited from the water source that is going to fuel the development across there. Okay, that is the first thing. Secondly, my sister who made the last presentation there said something that slipped me, but the part that I got was when she said that, I don't want to say what she didn't say, but she said that the Vocational Training Institute was not recommended for the development. Is that what she said?
So it was recommended.
It was not recommended.
It was recommended.
It was? Okay, well, thanks for the correction, because I thought she said it was not. Hence the housing. Okay, well, I'm glad it was, because I was so concerned and almost furious because we don't have any training center around here. Portman had one, we don't have it again, and all over the place we had, and there's none now, and I think the youths suffered. Not only youths, because most youths are not interested in education. It is the older persons, the bigger youths, that have, as it were, responsibilities. They are the ones who are seeking to enhance their education and to move on with their lives. So I am glad that that will be a part of the development, and that persons can be further educated and live better lives, like my brother said earlier on, and don't have to go outside of the parish and go on a foreign and whatever to seek gainful employment. So I am very happy for that. So I'd like Mr. Chris Jones now to tell me how much will the development impact us as it relates to water usage? Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I didn't come here to speak, but Mr. Smith is putting me on the spot. First and foremost, I'm Chris Jones. I'm part of the. Oh, you want to see me? Oh, okay. Up on deep. Oh, I hope I don't break the screen. Good evening again. Good Roselle people. Yes, I was asked by the engineering team to do my part of it, which is the water and the sewage poke around to see if it's viable and seek a sustainable environmental method to treat the sewage and to get water to the community. On the visit, I met Mr. Donaldson and Mr. Smith, who just asked the questions. And it's in St. Thomas, we have a lot of water. Water's literally coming out of the rock. But I know the questions that was asked when we were walking around in the community. When are we going to get some water? When are we going to get sustainable water? So I was informed about the catchment that Ms. Spear spoke about. And I was even told it was there from the slave days. And as far back as the oldest person in the community can remember, it has never dried up. So once we identified that, the first thought is, let's see what we can do to harness it, yes. And when I was asking the questions, Mr. Donaldson and Mrs. Smith explained to me how they went through great pain of putting in the pipes and a filtration system. And because we're coming from a higher elevation, I was surprised at the flow and the pressure that was coming out of the catchment pipes. So we toured it with other members of our team, and we saw where we can actually make it a very viable source of water that will back up the National Water Commission so we can serve the community. Now, I know the system was put in by the community, so questions are going to ask, do we have to pay for it? Who gets it? And what about the distribution? Well, like everything else that's a resource, it has to flow and something has to make it flow. So that is left to the developmental partners and the existing Roselle community. I was told that the existing Roselle community was defunct. So this is the opportunity for you guys to get back on board and support your community so you can get the support that you need. Okay? The wastewater system, especially mentioned about the impact of the pit latrines on the system, the fecal coliform. Now, whenever you drink water from springs and you go home and you start spending more time in the bathroom and in your bedroom, that's because there's a high level of bacteria present in the water. And for years and years, you hear them say, cut out the pit latrines, make them better, stop doing your business by the river or the water stream. Because the bacteria lingers on and goes all the way out to the sea. The only natural defense for it reaching the ocean is what we call bulrushes. Okay? That's nature's and God's way of protecting the ocean. So if you notice along the coastline where there's a high concentration of the grass, the coastline, the bulrush, is because there's a high level of fecal coliform. And it's nature is fighting its way to try to clean the water before it goes into the ocean. Because nothing dirty goes into the ocean. Okay? New Rozelle development I can't speak for their entire developmental plan, but one thing I know for sure is that they are committed to making what NWC says straight out, water is life. They're looking to improve the water quality and the water distribution in the community. And it has to be a team sport, where all of you guys participate. Okay? It's not cheap to run the system. Mr. Donaldson and Mr. Smith was tasked with running that system. And now they're having a problem because you go up to the catchment, you do all sorts of things in the catchment, you break down bush, you throw garbage up there. There is an end result, which is once it starts flowing through the system, it's going to block it up. And you don't have any water. Okay? So you have to pay attention to the natural resources that you're given by God. And this beautiful community, this beautiful parish, has that natural resource. Yeah, I hope I was able to answer the question, Mr. Smith. Okay? Just give it a chance. Development is growth. And growth in many, many areas. Okay? The one thing you can be sure of, wherever development goes, if road, water follows. And road and water usually comes first. Give it a chance. All right? Thanks.
Thank you very much. And I remember I started my moderation this evening by stating my bias towards development. And I've been in real estate for the last probably close to 15 years. And I've seen how developments have aided and bettered the life of people in so many communities. And not just for the infrastructure, but also for the local economies. Because once this development comes, then them going to want a supermarket, people going to want workers, money starts to spend in the local economy, and there's a matriculation that benefits the entire community. Amen? So we're going to ask my friend here from Heart Trust, who is coming to share or ask her question.
All right, good evening, everyone. Special recognition to the presentation team. I believe they deserve a hearty round of applause. They did extremely well. There was much clarity on the matter and obviously a lot of competence. I am from the Heart and Estate Trust. I am K. Mary Robotham, acting parish manager for the St. Thomas Parish Office. And this evening, the Heart and Estate Trust Region 2 St. Thomas Parish is represented by our regional director, Dr. Aston Spencer. No, he will not get away. I'm going to ask him to please stand so that he can be recognized. We also have other members of the team. We have our recruitment officer as well as our industrial liaison officer. I'm not so sure if we didn't come to speak because wherever there is development, human capital development takes precedence as well. With the road and the light and the water and everything, but it is important for us to clarify from the Heart and Estate Trust that we have been very actively operating in the parish of St. Thomas. And so the Heart and Estate Trust, we have the parish office. It is located at Mary Plaza upstairs. We have 10 officers, one parish manager. Our regional director also gets to sit in that office. Along with that office, we also have two massive partnerships in St. Thomas. That is a community training interventions partnership at the Yallas High School, where we do evening engagement for persons 17 and until you are ready to stop learning. In addition to that, we have another CTI. It is the Paul Bogle Vocational Training Institute, and that is located up License Side. And of course, we offer both day and evening classes for persons who are interested in vocational training and skills development. In addition to that, we also have the high school development education program. So for persons who did not get to achieve the different subjects to matriculate from high school, the Heart and Estate Trust currently offer all of those opportunities. We offer city and guilds in addition to the National Vocational Qualification of Jamaica. All right, and so we have all of those training resources and opportunities operating in and around the parish of St. Thomas. Our recruitment officers, we do a lot of collaboration with the Jamaica Constabulary Force. I'm seeing my dear friend Mr. Grasset, who is looking steadfast up here. We have been in a lot of DAC meetings discussing how HEART can further take training into the communities of St. Thomas. I want to point out that our last presenter would have mentioned 4 alternatives that I believe the gentleman misunderstood. The 4th one perhaps, where he mentioned that TVET would be lost. The 4th alternative would be a tourism development cottages, and if that is the possibility, then TVET would be lost up that side. But I beg to differ, please allow me, and I'll be finished soon. I beg to differ because with all the resources that we have just mentioned that the Heart and STA Trust currently have in the parish, and with the expansion that is coming for St. Thomas, for those persons who were at the Morant Bay Urban Center launch, you would remember that our dear Managing Director, Dr. Tanisha Ingleton, was one of the very many persons that went to collect our keys for another space that the Heart and STA Trust will be operating in short order. And I know that Dr. Spencer is sitting there and he's also on his phone because he's actively working on the plan for the Morant Bay Urban Center. I do believe we need to pause and give the government of Jamaica a round of applause. And no, I'm not representing the government of Jamaica, but because I work with the Heart and STA Trust, and I am aware of what it is that we're doing in St. Thomas. So even if that is the option that you take, I want persons to be mindful of the fact that we're on the ground and we're actively looking at expanding our resources in the parish of St. Thomas. Thank you so very much.
It's still open for somebody. 2 persons are actually coming. First person to the mic.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Patricia Bygrave, Public Health Inspector. Not used to the microphone. Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Patricia Bygrave, Public Health Inspector. And yes, St. Thomas Health Department welcomes development. But I have one question as it relates to the storms and storm swales, the vegetative swales, how it functions in the long term, the maintenance, and is there a special plant that is used in the swale? That is number 1 question. And the second question is, yes, we have looked at the wastewater management system that you propose, and what is the final disposal after dechlorination?
Okay, I'll take. Regarding the vegetative swales, for each particular site, we have to look at the vegetation that's best suited. There are some breeds that are typically used, such as one that's very popular is the vetiver grass, which has a very deep rooted structure. So it's popular for that type of disposal. And as it relates to the second question, thank you. After dechlorination, the water will be disposed of via the natural environment. So it will be released via a conduit, which will take the final disposed water to the marine environment.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Harvelyn Edwards, and I live right down at the entrance coming into Roselle. And to continue with the water, I have a problem with the water because you have to say that every 4 months I have to go into water commission to report the bursting. I don't know if it's when they pump the water, it bursts up the pipe, and lot of wastewater coming into, running water coming into my house, my yard. And I can remember one Christmas season, I have to go to my neighbor to wake him up to come and help me because the pipe burst and the water just bring all, even the house top the water reach. So I have a serious water problem at the entrance coming into Roselle. I can tell you Roselle water is very nice and I hate to see it waste. So I would love to see that problem corrected.
All right, thank you very much. I'm sure that the NWC representatives here will take that concern in consideration. But remember that we're asking questions, or asking to pose questions that are specific towards what are your concerns about the White Horses Roselle development? Anyone else? Come on up. I know you have the questions, don't be afraid and don't talk when we're gone and say you should have said and you should have said. The concerns are on your heart, come up and say, because sometimes we might hear things like my friend earlier and you heard wrong. So if in case that you heard something, you're not clear, don't be afraid to come and ask your questions. The media persons are asking that you come up on the platform so you can be seen a little bit better. Yeah man, come on TV, come on TV.
Good evening everybody. My name is Romario Taylor and I live right here in Roselle. So my question, and perhaps this was stated before I arrived, so pardon me if I'm asking something redundant. But my question is regarding this development. I know the target says low-income households, so I want to understand what is the target in terms of people of the Roselle, White Horses, surrounding communities. How are these people going to benefit from that particular development in terms of housing? Are we going to be doing, to say, probably a percentage of the community that we are looking at to say, okay, we're building in Roselle, so something must come out of it, or people from Roselle have ensured housing. So that's really where my question lies.
I think that's a fair enough question, targeted at the developers, but from a little bit of knowledge, I can say that that discussion has to be had with the NHT and the developers, and the phase 1, which will be Block B, will be NHT housing units. So the anticipation is that Roselle district will benefit from phase 1 especially. But that's something that I have noted, and to ensure that the developers in conjunction with the NHT can provide a legitimate answer for you. But that's the assumption.
Thank you. On that question, just to add to Ms. Pierce's answer, think about the fact that you are here now. The people of Roselle are here now. The rest of Jamaica don't know yet, So it means you have time to put your deposit together, to go to NHT tomorrow morning, get your pre-qualification, so when the people them come set up officers and so them starting to sell, the Roselle line supposed to wrap around the block, because everybody pre-qualified and ready because you got inside information. And that is one of the reasons why this community consultation meeting is so important. So you know about it and you can see how you can benefit from it. So I'm expecting everybody to go to NHT tomorrow morning and start work on the pre-approval letter. Amen?
Good evening. All right, I'm Carol Troy Doyley, President of the Rozelle Citizens Association. As it relates to the development, which I'm looking forward to, when this materializes, what would the drainage system be like for the community of Roselle? Thank you.
I hear somebody else muttering. You wanted to ask something else? Somebody was saying something about water? Come to the mic, miss. To the mic.
Okay, yes. The street lights and the water problem again. Yeah, we're having great problem as it relates to the street lights, and we have a lot of places right now that we don't have street lights. So if we have representative from Jamaica Public Service here, we would like just some form of clarification as what would happen in that case. Thanks.
All right, I'll take that one again. So for the provision of the utilities, remember that there's a lot, I was shown on the table, that there's a lot for the provision of utilities. And for such a large scale development, I can tell you that construction cannot begin until these provisions are approved of. And we have some of the agents, I don't know why mosquitoes, but we have the relevant agencies who, some of which are represented here, but from the road aspect, the NAA certifies and makes sure that the access is up to par. We have the National Environmental Agency who's the final say in the recommendations for the development and who gets all the comments from the other commenting agencies. And something like utilities cannot be oversighted.
Next person. There's a saying that when the tide rise, all the boats are lifted. And that's one of the effects of having development come into your community. You can come. You're coming? Come. You know, no matter how short, man, come, man. You can explain clearly. And by the diagram, you mean the housing, the housing diagram itself? Okay.
All right, everybody can see this. Can everybody see the diagram up here clearly? Okay, so it shows what the proposed development is like or is going to be. And I'll start from the bottom going up. So here is where we'll have the sewage treatment system. Over here is the social services. So we're talking about things like the institutions, the commercial that is also to the southern area. And here we'll have a plaza, and there are different types of shops, establishments that will be recommended for here. Now we have scattered through these light green areas are some parks, and these will be central areas or communal areas that everyone who lives in the community will have access to. Over here is one of the vegetative parks that will be reserved. And all the light green areas are parks. So in terms of access to the community, it will be located centrally. This is going to be your main entrance, which gives access to the commercial and social services. And from there, you see that there are sub roadways that leads to each lot. And each of these blocks will be phases. So block 1, which will be the NHT scheme, is where phase 1 will begin of the project. So highlighted here in the leftmost area is a landscape reserve. And so this area will not be touched. The only action that can or will take place in this area is for the deliberate planting of the lancewood tree that I had mentioned and other endemics that we've identified in the area that we wish to preserve. So that's the only type of activity that will happen. The trees will be maintained and there will be a vegetative buffer from the housing to these areas. So in terms of communal areas and activities that the community can participate in, there's a central park here for activities. I see a football field and what can be a netball court and other activities. So this is the general layout. If you have other questions regarding this after the meeting, please feel free to ask your questions. But you can see the general layout of what the proposal is. Central, this is the main road. This amber line here is the main road. So this is Kingston to the west and Morant Bay to the east, and the entrance is Central. So these other light areas are all the sub roads relative to the major road. And the falls, remember I showed you that vegetative buffer that will have 11 meters wide of vegetation that will not be touched, is along here. So all these light green areas are areas that are to be preserved as they are. The only action that can take place within these areas is enhancement of what exists. I hope I've answered the question.
And while the other persons come to the mic, I just want to remind persons that the same document is available at the St. Thomas Municipal Corporation Office, 11 Church Street, the St. Thomas Parish Library at Morant Bay, White Horses Post Office, and the Social Development Commission, Springfield Road in Morant Bay. Also, it's available at the NEPA office, 11 Caledonia Avenue, Kingston 5.
And to add to that, you have another 21 days to ask questions, provide comments about the community consultation and what's within the EIA. So you do have additional time if you are not confident in asking a question today.
Next question. Anybody else? Where do you go?
So as was just said, you have the areas where you can have a copy of the document to review, and you can ask questions to NEPA. You can also have questions answered by myself. I will provide contact information. So there are two avenues, and the main one is through the NEPA. You can send an email or you can call in.
Okay, Mr. James Roberts is coming.
Good evening, everybody. Most of us learned about your function in the newspaper, and we clipped it out. We have read it 2-3 times. I'm going to ask you to read it and make comments on what is in that article. That's very important, because a lot of what is in the media, and I make no comment to the media that's here this evening, is incorrect. So we'd like you to comment line by line what was in the public domain, because there's been no corrections, and I'm happy if it's correct, but we do need to know. Some of us do read a lot. We haven't heard about the number of units. You haven't told us this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 block B. Those are the details. We want to know about density. I'm not trained as an environmentalist. I realize the three of you are well equipped for this function. I am not. I must tell you and recognize the presence of Hart at the highest level, a director. You have been recognized properly. But let's just be honest. I called you this morning and asked you many, many questions to prepare myself for being present. The labor force required by the project a number of questions, and you have not addressed any of them to my satisfaction, to know what and where we're going. I called Hart to ask them a project like this, per home, per house, what is the labor usage? You have that equipment. You were supposed to give us those answers. And I must tell you, thank you for coming at short notice. I want to hear some more about your project. I want to hear more in depth. I'm member of parliament. Nobody's going to ask me questions, and I can't answer them. And that's just the beginning. Let me state for the record, this project would not even be on the table contemplated if we did not have the best roads in Jamaica. The best road from Harbour View to Morant Bay with no toll. That is what makes this project viable. And there's a lot that we have to understand. We now have the best urban center in Jamaica and possibly the Caribbean. When I heard a gentleman come up and he was looking at point 1, 2, 3, 4 of your study, can I have a printed copy? I don't really want it even digitally. I don't want a hard copy so I can read it and discuss it with my counselors, go and get and learn and understand where we're going. We are very, very positive to your project, but you have not answered the questions. What percentage of this land, 417 acres was mentioned, what percentage of that 417 does this represent? What percentage of what this represents is in sustainable agriculture? Those are the questions that, and I sat there and I listened and I made notes that we really want some answers on. And there are many others, but it'll take our time because we're not in a hurry.
I will try to address the concerns that are within my realm to answer. First is the article that was published by the Gleaner. You're not hearing me? So the consultants who conducted the environmental impact assessment have not been in dialogue with the Gleaner. And so the article that was written by the Gleaner, I think, was written by or in exclusion of comments from us. So I cannot speak to the article. I can see that there are some incorrect information presented in the article, but I will not comment on exact statements because this was not done with the contribution of the EIA consultants. The entirety of the property is 417 acres. The proposed area to be developed is 187 acres. That's somewhere around 46%. And highlighted in the table, I'm showing that 57% of the 187 acres will be occupied by the residential units. And for open spaces within that 187 acres, we're looking at 21%. In terms of access to the EIA, there are a number of areas that we had submitted the hard copy as requested by law and instructed by NEPA, which we have. And I will provide more copies. Mr. Robertson, you can let me know what is the desired number, and I will do so. Can you please remind me of some of the other concerns? There are 895 units. For Block B, I think the number is 200 and something. I don't have the exact figure right now. We have been given, believe it or not, 20 minutes to do the presentation. And so it's difficult to produce all the information here, but it is available. It is in the EIA. And so I will provide access information, email addresses, contact numbers for persons who want to find out more. But what we did was based on the community survey that we had done and based on the inspections that we carried out ourselves, we highlighted what we felt was the paramount things to be discussed here as anticipated by the community. Because you yourself had expressed some concerns when we were walking around in the community, and so we made an effort to highlight that. So I will admit that all your concerns will not be addressed here. And that is why legally you're provided with another 21 days to express those concerns, to ask questions, to make suggestions. It's not a done deal. If there's something that you see that you know of, best management practices that have been implemented in Europe, in other areas, and you would love to see it during this construction, please comment. Please offer those suggestions. Today is not the end it all. You do have some time to make your suggestions and inquiries.
Anybody has questions, come and ask your questions. There's no rush. There's no 20 minutes. Because we can reject this afternoon and indicate that there is no acceptance of this process at this time. And NEPA would have to come back and ask you to come back better equipped. What are the numbers block by block, the square footage of each home? Those are questions that people want to hear answered. We're not going to go through a process and then we hear we had your chance. This is not a chance issue. This is not a 20-minute issue. If you're proposing, what are you proposing? How many units, the size of each unit, the square footage, those are the details at NEPA we want to hear answered. We are so supportive of what's taking place with the development of the East. When we read in the Gleaner, NHT 660 housing solutions, when we read and understand these things, we want more. And I must say to you, I am very disappointed at the quality of the presentation. It leaves me bewildered and searching for details. So we're not going to approve, okay, as a community, this evening something, and then when we hear we approved it and what are we agreeing to? Because the truth is, the homes to your left have certain lot sizes. What are your lot sizes? They're details that you need to discuss with us, or we're not going no further until you be and show us a level of respect. Nobody's going to accuse me. I don't compromise. I want this more than anybody in this room, including the investors. But you have to come with a better presentation, and maybe you need to ask us, what do we believe should be in that presentation? Because maybe we could help you. What was the reason why Roselle Falls, the water stopped running some years ago? You must have heard that concern from the residents as you walked. What percentage of this 198 acres which belongs to you and your investors at this time is in agricultural use? I am not in any way defending anybody who is on any piece of land. Is any of your 417 acres that you spoke about in any dispute at this time? There is so much that needs to be answered. I came here from 11 o'clock to sit and wait and prepare my thought process for this afternoon. This we are not going to get wrong. We want the 4,000 homes, and we see this as an important start of the catalyst. If we approve or agree and support this, do you know that immediately you're going to have a five times explosion of home starts? But this may be the standard. And this may not be the standard we want as a beginning. We are positive, but we need better answers. We're not going to be heard that we had our chance. Our chance is not a 20-minute chance. That's not mine. I don't live that way. I don't represent anything in life that way. So please, prepare yourself. How is it you could be preparing this and you have not even sat with some of us to explain what you're going to be presenting so we can look like we have sense? I am not equipped to answer any questions, only to ask a number of pertinent questions. What units? What is the value at this time in US dollars? Don't come up here and tell me devaluation. Don't come up here and tell me what's your proposed thought process to a number of things. You have to do a lot better, or else we are not. And I'm just saying to NEPA right now, you notice you read a statement which says you answer no questions, you ask nothing. It's a process, which is really a disclaimer. I am ready to work with you, and I am ready to work in one interest, Jamaica. And I'm not grandstanding this afternoon.
Type of units, whether one or two, one if they are attached or detached.
Alright, I'm going to address the phases. I realize persons are curious about the phases. So the development, and bear with me because I'm strolling through the EIA. The development should occur over a 5-year period in blocks, as I said earlier. So phase 1 essentially will be considered the site preparation phase for the first block. And here we'll have things like site clearing, grading and excavation, road construction, etc. So here is where the utilities that you're concerned about will be in place. So the construction, phase 1 begins with construction of 100 units located in block B, which is here. So the site preparation and construction of 100 units will constitute phase 1. In phase 2, we're looking at blocks B and C. So for the persons who are far away, this is block B and this is block C. So we're starting with the southern limits of the development. And here we'll have 160 units. We also have the installation of utilities such as water, electricity, and sewage. And here the parks and playgrounds will be put in place as well. And there will be the perimeter fencing. The other phase now will have 310 units splitting amongst block C, D, E, and F. And here we'll expect to have finishing touches to the first phase by this time. So phase 3 is for 310 units. Then we'll have another phase, phase 4, which is construction of 200 detached houses, 280 two-bedroom units, 50 townhouse units, and 25 duplex batches. And this is in blocks E, F, and G. So the ones that are located in the higher region of the property is where we're gonna have the semi-detached houses and the townhouses. And the last phase will be the blocks F and G, where we'll have 75 housing units. So we do have a summary of the proposal in blocks. So I'll repeat that. Phase 1 is Block B, which begins with construction of 100 units and installation of the various utilities, so that when those houses are completed, these people will have access to those utilities. Phase 2 will happen with the continuation of Block B and in the commencement of Block D with 160 units. Phase 3 will see blocks D, E, F, and G starting, and this will see 310 units. Phase 4, which will happen in E, F, and G, will see 250 units. And for phase 5, which is E, F, and G, the topmost section, we're looking at 75 units.
You've been mentioning number of units. What about the sizes? We spoke about semi-detached, we spoke about duplexes, townhouses.
All right, for those questions, I'll ask the engineers to respond.
Good evening, everybody on the sound of my voice. Honorable Minister, Member of Parliament. It's not that we were not interested in answering the questions. It's just that there is a particular protocol that we have to follow. And so the persons who have engaged to carry out this process, it is their job, because of their intimate knowledge of what has transpired, to answer what is happening. Are you hearing me any better? Okay. So, about 10 years ago, we decided to look into what is now the Rozelle Estates Development. A group of individuals came together, eclectic individuals, and there have been several changes, I wouldn't want to use the word iterations, of what we proposed. We have run into many roadblocks. The density that the Member of Parliament spoke about, that density was reviewed. The amount of land that you see here was originally designed to house 2,000 units on it. We changed that, and we went down to 47% of the total area that is being considered, but it wasn't economically viable. So what we did was the best exchange that we could to find where we could provide what our vision is for what we want St. Thomas to have as a development. And let me say this because this is something that we're very passionate about, and we're willing also to walk away from the project. Most projects around the world, they weren't designed poorly, but they were managed poorly. And we are not going to have a project that is going to have units that degenerate into something that is unsightly because of what people want as individualism. So the project that we're proposing here is a project that we have engaged these people to make it sustainable, but it must also be aesthetically pleasing, and it must be something that we all as investors would want to reside in. So to your questions, she has already explained that there are 660 houses that are in the lower blocks, which will be the lower income houses. And we want this for the people of St. Thomas. The parts that are here, the buffer zones, everything that is laid out here is supposed to be comparable to anywhere you can go in the Caribbean, or she keeps mentioning Europe. The size of the houses is 440 for the one bedroom, 440 square feet for the one bedroom, and 6 is the roll of NEPA in the simplest terms. Mr. James? Honorable, is there anything else that you want any clarity on? one is that there are specific guidelines as to how this particular session should run. And so they are actually following the process that has been set by NEPA. So the timelines and everything that you have is actually set by NEPA, it's prescribed. There's a guide that we were given by NEPA as to how we should conduct this. And that's why we are doing it this particular way. But we are willing to adjust because it is a consultation. We're here to get your feedback, answer questions from you. Is there any other question that I may be able to assist you with?
Sir, what is your name?
Oh, I'm very sorry about that. My humblest apologies. My name is Donovan Farquharson. I have an interest in this project. I have an interest in this project. And I wanted to see it turn out very well. Minimum square footage for the lot is 325. 3,250, sorry. 3,000. Okay, so half an acre from my simple maths is 20,000 square feet. And if you divide the 20,000 by 4, I think that is 1 in 5. So that is 1/10 of an acre. Does that answer your question? It's a little under, it's a little less than a quarter of an acre, right? Right. I will hand back to the moderator, and if there are any other questions that would need my input. The lady at the back, I am really not hearing you. I was able to project my voice. Can you do the same for me, please? No. The 1/10 of an acre is for these units that are in the 660. These are the units that will be available through the NHD. The townhouses are a different arrangement, and these are the units here. They are duplex townhouses, so there'll be 2 houses together.
Alright, so what happens to the falls in that there?
Okay. I had no and I have no intention of dominating or taking over this process. I may get a letter from NEPA saying that, Member of Parliament, you have interfered and gone further than you should. But I'm not afraid of that. I asked you, what were the reasons the residents, the individuals in the area gave you who did the impact studies of many types, because you presented about 3 this afternoon, for why the fall stopped running some time ago. I want to hear what they told you. Those issues must have come up, because the concern is, and I'm glad you put in the part about the park. I want you to tell us more about the park. We take that as a national St. Thomas treasure, the waterfalls. And we want to hear more about your park. We want to hear what you found, what you can tell NEPA. NEPA is not answering any questions today. We respect and understand the process. But what did you find? If that did not come up in your by walking around and speaking to the farmers who are on your land, then that's interesting to me, because I see this development as a positive. When individuals went and tampered with the waterfalls, we were powerless. Why didn't the owners of the land come forward at the time and do something about it? You see, these are sort of the thought process that I bring to the table.
I'm going to ask the engineer who did the study on the falls to answer that particular question, if I may. This is Mr. Carlinus Johnson from CIVEX. He will answer the questions pertaining to the sustainability and whatever protective measures we were putting in for the Rozelle Falls.
Thank you, Mr. Farquharson. Good evening, everyone. Good evening to the media and to Honorable Member of Parliament. All right. So, in carrying out the studies and speaking to persons in the area, well, it didn't exactly come up in terms of the times when the falls, you know, ceased for a while. However, what we remember and recognize from our studies is that there were times when the falls didn't run for some time, and those were periods where we had extended droughts, and so there was just no water coming out of the hills and out of the ground at that time. So if you can inform us now, then great. We would love to hear, so we could make any sort of adjustments that we need to make to our design. But our design at this point, it considered the fact that water comes out of the ground, also that water comes out of the hills from rainfall and lots of runoff. So what we did, because a lot of it comes down through here, what we did was to include a sort of a French drain here that would capture whatever comes down out of the reserve. We would take it under or through the roads, and we would include all of Central Park here. We would include a sort of a detention area under the park. So it would be a huge excavation that we would fill with filter material, and it would contain all the water that usually pond in this area underground, and we'll take it back down and release it here, so it would come down through the natural flow path back into the falls. So it will not disrupt the flow that normally comes down. It would still contain that flow, and it will store it as it naturally does, and it will release it back here, so the falls will still be running. There will be no disruption. So if you have another explanation as to why the falls, we would love to hear.
1 minute, I don't want to be rude. The waterfalls, even if we have drought in it, never stop running. Never stop. Always people running. Never stop, never dry up.
Right. So I'd love to hear why it stopped running.
We don't know. That's a question we want to ask. Why it stopped running that season.
Remember at the beginning I had said I do have a question for the community. It was more so a lighter question, whether it's Roselle or Roselle. But now I have another one. From the questions that you're asking, is it that you know of information where there's an engineering explanation with somebody diverting water in the area upstream of the source of the falls? It sounds like that's what people are hinting to, and that's valuable information for us. So without identifying yourself, you can just say yes, so that we will investigate that further. But from myself, I spent at least 10 days walking the length and breadth of the site. And I spoke to numerous people. I have names written down, contact information, etc. And I was told that it was only when we had this extended drought period of several weeks, if not months, and that was the only time when the falls went dry. So if there are periods where you have no water running to the falls or via dam head, then we need to know about it. I have already heard some yeses already, so we will do our investigation, and we'll make sure that based on the result of those investigations, then the design incorporates that kind of setback.
Mr. Jones spoke about a water catchment in the hills, which is possibly a water source and supply for these 660 or 913, not really critical at this time, but it deals with what you are presenting today. we need to know if that water source has anything to do with the underwater source that feeds Roselle. We want to know if they're connected. We want to know what studies have been done that you can share with us, because I'm not going to be caught flat-footed without information. So if you can come and just say clearly. I see one of the directors for the project came up and he spoke with a lot of clarity. He has carried us forward. But we now need to know one more detail. What is a water source for this project? Does it have anything to do with the Roselle waterfalls water source? Are they connected, not connected? What proof do you have of that? We have to hear more details, and we're not going to find ourselves with 21 days. I'm saying to NEPA, we are not accepting this process at this time. I have said it with clarity. There's no going forward until you come back and make another presentation. We have all the time. Do you see the turnout you got here? This is not the norm. You got a very good turnout. It's because the residents in this area are very concerned about their environment from many angles.
So what I can say to that is that the Roselle Falls, as Mr. Johnson has just presented, will not be interrupted. The falls the supply from the stream that feeds into the falls will not be diverted or otherwise used or blocked. So that's what we had presented earlier, that we are making a special effort. We are providing a bufferage area for the riparian area along the stream, and Mr. Johnson had just explained that we will not be blocking. Right, I'm speaking to Mr. Johnson from CIVEX. But I believe what you're speaking to, that water source that Mr. Jones spoke of, is Dam Head, which is not on the property, and so the development should not interfere with the supply to Dam Head. Dam Head is from a natural spring, and we've studied it. We've looked at the flow there. We've looked at water quality. But Dam Head occurs somewhere in this vicinity. But because we were doing an assessment of the features not only on the site but adjacent to the site, we had come upon Dam Head. But Dam Head will not be a part of the development, as it's outside of the property.
Just a quick point of clarification. So, the understanding is with Mr. Jones and what he was referring to, it was based on a conversation that he had in the community with residents while he was in the community, looking at the possibility of developing Dam Head for the community use, not for the project itself. The project is not looking to interfere with Dam Head. The water will be sourced otherwise through end of the sea, and that is what was proposed in the EIA.
Ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank the community of Roselle for coming out. We want to thank the consultants who were contracted by the developers, Ms. Pierce, Mr. Swaby, and Ms. Johnson. We want to thank everyone who participated and for the time that you spent or the time that you sacrificed coming out to be a part of the community consultation. The hereafter will now be between the community, NEPA, who this was part of the approval process, and what comes out of here. So thanks again for coming. My name is Noel Phillips. It was my pleasure this evening to be your moderator. Thanks again to the community of Roselle.